Samuel had always been a simple man. He lived on a quiet ranch at the edge of the village, surrounded by dry fields, dusty wind, and the memories of better seasons. His father had once owned a thriving ranch with healthy cattle and green grass stretching across the land. But those days had faded long ago. A long drought had hit the region, and Samuel's land began to lose its natural strength. The soil became hard, the grass turned yellow, and the small water stream that his cattle depended on shrank to a thin line. Samuel worked every day from sunrise to sunset, hoping something would change. He believed that if he just kept going, the land would bless him again. But no matter how hard he worked, his 2 cows grew weaker and thinner, and even he could feel hunger more often than comfort. He ate bread when he could, drank water sparingly, and hoped that someday rain would fall again. People in the village knew Samuel as the poor rancher who never gave up. They respected him, but no one could really help him because they were struggling too. The drought had affected everyone, but Samuel felt it the most because his ranch depended on every blade of grass that grew. Every morning he looked at the sky and wished for clouds, but instead he saw the same bright, empty blue. One evening, when Samuel was repairing the old fence near his pasture, he saw a stranger walking toward him from the road. It was unusual to see visitors because the ranch was far from the village, and very few people traveled that way. The man was dressed like a traveler, dust-covered boots, a hat pulled low, and a small bag hanging from his shoulder. Samuel straightened up, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and waited for the man to reach him. "Good evening," the traveler said with a tired smile. "Mind if I rest for a moment?" Samuel nodded. "Of course. You can sit on that rock." The traveler thanked him and sat down, drinking some water from his bottle. After a moment of silence, he looked at Samuel and asked gently, "You live alone here?" Samuel nodded again. "Yes. My father passed away years ago. It's just me and 2 cows." The traveler's eyes softened. "Times are hard." Samuel didn't complain, but his eyes gave away the truth. "Yes," he admitted quietly. "They are." The traveler looked around the ranch as if studying it, then leaned forward a little. "I've seen many ranches during my journey, but yours feels different, like it has some story to tell." Samuel didn't know how to answer, so he simply smiled politely. After another pause, the traveler said something strange, something Samuel wasn't prepared for. "I know a woman," he began slowly, "who is looking for a husband." Samuel blinked, confused. He didn't expect such a topic, especially from a stranger on a dusty road. The traveler continued, "She lives far from here, in a valley beyond the hills. She's not from your village, so no one here knows her. She is tall, strong, and different from most women people see. Some even call her unusual. But she is kind-hearted, and she comes with a generous bride price." Samuel's hands froze where they rested on his knees. Bride price? He hadn't heard that phrase in a long time. Most marriages happened out of love or family arrangements. Not with payments. He didn't even know what to say. "What do you mean?" Samuel asked carefully. The traveler's voice softened. "She is willing to offer a healthy dairy cow, among other things, to the man she marries." Samuel's heart beat a little faster. A healthy cow, one strong, milk-producing cow, could save his ranch. It could be the beginning of rebuilding everything he had lost. But he also felt uneasy. Why would a woman offer something like that? Why such a strange arrangement? The traveler seemed to understand his hesitation. "She has her reasons," he said calmly. "She lives alone, just like you. She wants companionship, someone who won't judge her. She has a quiet nature. People misunderstand her, so she stays away from crowds." Samuel rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Why would she choose me?" The traveler shrugged lightly. "Maybe because you're honest. Maybe because you're humble. Maybe because life has carved gentleness into you. Not every man becomes softer after hardship. You did." Samuel didn't know how to respond to such words. The traveler continued, "If you agree, you can meet her. She will decide, and so will you. But I must be honest, she is very different from what you might expect. She is bigger, taller, and more reserved than most women. Some people find her appearance unusual. But she is good-hearted. Samuel felt torn. On one hand, he had never thought of marrying a stranger, let alone someone described as unusual. On the other hand, the ranch was dying. And so was his hope. A healthy cow could turn his whole life around. "Why is she offering a cow?" Samuel asked quietly. "Because it is her way of showing sincerity," the traveler replied. "And maybe because she knows her life is not easy for others to accept. She offers what she can." Samuel stood quietly, thinking deeply. He had always believed marriage should be built on familiarity, trust, and understanding, not on desperation. But life does not always give choices that fit our expectations. Sometimes, survival comes first. The traveler gently placed a hand on Samuel's shoulder. "Just meet her. If you feel uncomfortable, you can walk away. But if you feel even a little hope, maybe it is worth trying." Samuel looked at the weak cows grazing in the dry field. He had grown up watching his father work the land with strength and pride. He wanted to honor that legacy. But without help, everything would soon collapse. Finally, Samuel sighed. "Where can I find her?" The traveler smiled, stood up, and pointed toward the hills. "Beyond that ridge, there's a narrow path leading down into a valley. Her name is Clara. She lives in a small wooden house near a spring." The name sounded gentle, maybe even soothing. Samuel felt strangely curious. The next morning, Samuel woke early. He washed his face with cold water, brushed the dust from his clothes, and took a deep breath. Then he started walking toward the hills, feeling both nervous and hopeful. The sun was warm on his back, the wind carried the scent of dry earth, and every step felt like he was walking toward a future he couldn't predict. The path the traveler mentioned was narrow and slightly hidden, almost as if it didn't want to be found. But Samuel kept following it, pushing aside branches and stepping over stones. After nearly an hour, he reached a small valley he had never seen before, though he had lived nearby his whole life. The valley was green, shockingly green. Grass grew thicker there, and a small spring flowed gently across the rocks. It felt peaceful, almost safe. There, by the water, stood a woman. She was tall, much taller than Samuel expected. Her shoulders were broad, her arms strong, and her presence felt powerful. She wore a long dress that touched the ground, and her dark hair was tied back neatly. When she turned to look at him, her expression was calm, but guarded, as if she were ready to walk away if she felt judged. "You must be Samuel," she said softly. Her voice surprised him. It was gentle, clear, and kind. Nothing like the rumors of strangeness he had heard. "Yes," Samuel replied, trying to steady his nerves. "I came to meet you." Clara nodded and gestured for him to come closer. They talked for a long time about simple things, like land, chores, and everyday life. Clara avoided speaking about her past, and Samuel felt she carried some heavy memories she wasn't ready to share. Finally, Clara looked at him quietly and said, "If you marry me, I only ask one thing. Please do not ask about where I came from or what happened before. I want a peaceful life without the shadows of my past." Samuel hesitated but understood. Everyone has a story they are not ready to reopen. "I won't ask," he said softly. Clara studied his face carefully, searching for any sign of judgment. When she found none, she nodded. "Then I agree," she said simply. Samuel did not know it then, but this quiet agreement would change his life forever. The day of the wedding arrived much sooner than Samuel expected. It was simple, quiet, and without much celebration, because neither he nor Clara had family around them. But somehow, the simplicity made it feel sincere. Clara arrived wearing a long veil that covered most of her face and almost her entire body. Her steps were slow and careful, as if she was trying to make herself smaller than she really was. Samuel noticed the way people looked at her, some with curiosity, some with confusion, and some with whispered questions. She was taller and bigger than most women they had seen, and they didn't understand her mysterious nature. Samuel tried to ignore the whispers. He stood beside her with calmness, reminding himself of the decision he had made. He had chosen trust. He had chosen hope, and somewhere deep inside him, he believed that Clara deserved kindness more than judgment. When the elder read the simple vows, Clara's hands trembled slightly. Samuel gently nodded to reassure her, and she lifted her head just a little. Though he couldn't see her face through the veil, he felt her trying to be brave. When the elder announced them husband and wife, Clara whispered a quiet, "Thank you," barely loud enough for Samuel to hear. After the ceremony, they received the promised cow, a strong, healthy dairy cow with soft fur and a calm temperament. Samuel felt a spark of hope rise inside him. This cow was more than just an animal. It was a second chance for his ranch. The villagers gathered around, admiring the cow and murmuring about the strange marriage. But Samuel didn't care. All he cared about was that his life might finally be turning around. During the small meal that followed, Clara remained mostly silent. She sat near Samuel but spoke only when necessary. When people tried to ask her questions, she answered politely, but briefly. She didn't laugh, didn't smile, and kept her hands folded tightly on her lap. Samuel noticed the way she avoided looking in anyone's eyes, as if she feared what she might see there. After a while, the villagers left one by one, leaving Samuel and Clara standing alone near the old wooden gate. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. Samuel glanced at Clara and noticed that she looked tired, maybe even overwhelmed. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. "Yes," she replied softly, adjusting her veil. "It's just been a long day. We can go home now," Samuel said. "The ranch is quiet. You might feel more at ease there." Clara nodded gratefully. They walked side by side toward the ranch. The path was peaceful, but Samuel could sense Clara's nervousness with every step. She held her hands together tightly, and her footsteps were heavier than before. He wondered what thoughts filled her mind: fear, uncertainty, or perhaps memories she didn't want to relive. When they reached the ranch, Clara stopped and looked around. The land was dry but clean. The little house stood with its old wooden walls, showing years of struggle and survival. The barn beside it held the new cow, along with Samuel's two old ones. "It's quiet here," Clara whispered. "I hope that's good," Samuel replied. "It is. Quiet feels safe." Samuel smiled a little. "Then you're safe here." Clara didn't respond immediately, but her shoulders relaxed slightly. Inside the house, Samuel showed her the kitchen, the living area, and the small bedroom. Clara examined everything carefully, her eyes scanning each corner, as if she needed to know where she was placing every step. Samuel noticed that she walked with caution, almost as if she expected something to go wrong. "This is your home now," Samuel said quietly. "Ours." Clara nodded but didn't say a word. As evening grew darker, Samuel prepared a simple dinner: bread, tea, and a little boiled milk. They ate quietly. Samuel tried to make small conversation, asking if she liked the valley, if she needed anything, or if she felt comfortable. Clara answered softly, always polite, but she never let her guard down. When it was time to sleep, Clara stood up slowly. She looked at the bedroom door, then at Samuel, and for a moment, she seemed uneasy. "You must be tired," Samuel said. "You can rest first." Clara nodded and walked toward the bedroom. When she reached the doorway, she turned back and said, "Thank you for your kindness today." Samuel gave a small smile. "You don't need to thank me for being kind." Clara lowered her eyes and entered the room. Samuel cleaned the cups and placed the dishes aside. He expected Clara to come out again or call him, but she didn't. After a while, he walked to the bedroom door and gently knocked. "Clara? Do you need anything?" There was a short silence before she replied, her voice slightly shaky. "No, I'm fine. I just need rest." "All right," Samuel said softly. "Good night." He started to walk away but stopped when he heard the small sound of a lock turning from inside. The door was locked. Samuel stood still for a moment, unsure of what to think. It wasn't anger or frustration that filled him, it was confusion. Why would Clara lock the door? They were married now. They lived in the same house. He didn't expect closeness immediately, but locking the door felt like a wall being built between them. He hesitated, then knocked again lightly. "Clara?" "Yes?" Her voice came, calm but distant. "You don't have to lock the door," he said gently. "You're safe here." There was a pause. Then Clara replied, "I know. I just need some space tonight. Please. Understand." Samuel stood quietly, listening to the sincerity in her voice. She wasn't being rude. She wasn't angry. She just sounded scared, or unsure. Or maybe both. "All right," he finally said, stepping back. "I respect that. Rest well." He walked to the small bench near the window and sat down. The night outside was calm, and the stars were spreading across the sky. But inside him, a mixture of concern and curiosity grew. He didn't know what to expect from this marriage. He didn't know what Clara was hiding, or why she felt the need to shut herself away. He reminded himself of his promise not to ask about her past. Maybe this was part of the past she was running from. Maybe she needed time. Maybe she needed to feel safe before letting anyone come closer. Samuel lay down on the old couch in the corner of the living room. It wasn't comfortable, but he didn't mind. What mattered to him was giving Clara the peace she needed. He looked at the closed bedroom door one last time before closing his eyes. Hours passed, and Samuel woke up briefly during the night when he heard footsteps inside the room. Clara's shadow moved across the light coming through the window. She was checking something, maybe looking around. Maybe making sure she was alone. The quiet sound of her steps told him she wasn't sleeping well. He didn't say anything. He didn't knock. He didn't push. He let her be. By morning, the door was still locked. When Clara finally came out, she kept her eyes low, as if she felt guilty for locking the door. Samuel didn't mention it. Instead, he offered her tea and talked about the ranch, the cows, and the chores. Clara relaxed slowly as the morning went on. She helped Samuel feed the cows, cleaned the barn, and swept the yard. She worked quietly but efficiently. Samuel noticed she moved with intelligence. She knew how to handle animals, how to fix small things, how to manage work without being told. She wasn't helpless. She wasn't lost. She was just guarded. As the day ended, they shared another quiet meal. Clara didn't lock the door that night, but she still kept distance. She slept on one side of the bed, facing the wall, while Samuel slept on the couch again by choice. The strange marriage had begun not with warmth and closeness, but with silence, distance, and a door that had been locked on the first night. Samuel didn't understand her reasons, but he made a decision that night. He would give Clara time. He would respect her space, and he would wait patiently until she decided to trust him. He didn't know it then, but this patience would lead him closer to her hidden truth than he ever imagined. The days that followed were quiet but filled with small moments that made Samuel think more deeply about Clara. Their marriage was nothing like the stories he had heard growing up. There were no cheerful mornings, no laughter over meals, and no sense of comfort yet. Instead, there was a strange mix of silence, distance, and careful observation. Clara moved through the house, as if she was trying not to disturb anything. She spoke softly, avoided long conversations, and still kept a part of herself locked away, just like she had locked the bedroom door on the first night. But despite her silence, she worked hard. She woke before sunrise every day and finished chores Samuel hadn't even asked her to do. Some mornings he opened the door to find the yard clean, the water buckets filled, and the cows already fed. She moved so quietly that Samuel sometimes didn't even hear her footsteps. It was as if she had learned to live like a shadow. One afternoon, Samuel returned from repairing a fence on the far side of the ranch and found Clara sweeping inside the barn. The sunlight streaming in through the wooden slats made her look almost peaceful. She didn't see him right away, and he watched her for a moment. The way she moved, careful but strong, made him realize that she had spent many years working alone. She knew how to handle heavy tasks without asking for help. When Clara finally noticed him, she froze for a second. Not out of fear, but out of surprise. as if she wasn't used to anyone watching her work. "You don't have to do all that alone," Samuel said gently. Clara brushed hair from her face and replied, "I like keeping busy. It makes the day feel easier." Samuel nodded but couldn't help noticing her eyes, which always held a quiet sadness he didn't understand. He wanted to ask her why she carried that sadness, but he remembered her request to never ask about her past, so he stayed silent. As days passed, Samuel tried different ways to get to know her better. He asked about her favorite foods, her likes and dislikes, and what she enjoyed doing. Clara answered politely but never opened up fully. Sometimes she paused before speaking, as if she was choosing her words carefully. She still avoided eye contact and often kept her hands tucked close to her body, like someone who didn't know how to relax around people. The villagers noticed Clara's strange habits too. When Samuel went to town for supplies, they whispered questions. Why does she hide her face so much? Why doesn't she talk? Where did she come from? Are you sure she's normal? Samuel disliked these comments, but he never argued. He simply told them, "She's my wife, and she's kind. That's enough." But the whispers followed him home in his thoughts. And with each passing day, his curiosity about Clara grew stronger. He didn't want to invade her privacy, but he couldn't ignore the mystery surrounding her. She was hiding something she feared would change how he saw her. One rainy afternoon, Samuel came home earlier than usual. A storm had rolled in suddenly, and the sky grew dark faster than expected. The wind blew hard, and the sound of thunder echoed through the valley. Samuel ran toward the barn to make sure the cows were safe. When he reached it, he found the barn door swinging wildly in the wind. And right there, struggling to close it, was Clara. Her hair was wet from the rain, sticking to her face, and her dress clung to her skin. She pushed with all her strength to fix the broken latch, but the wind was too strong. Without thinking, Samuel rushed forward to help her. Together, they pushed the heavy door shut and held it until the wind eased. Once the door settled, Clara stepped back and brushed water from her face. "Are you all right?" Samuel asked, breathing heavily. "Yes," she whispered, though her voice trembled. "I didn't want the cows to get scared." A strong gust of wind blew again, and Clara's sleeve snagged on a rusty nail sticking out of the barn wall. The fabric tore slightly, pulling the sleeve downward. Before she could cover it, Samuel saw something on her upper arm. It wasn't a bruise or a wound. It looked like a deep mark, almost like a large birthmark or an unusual scar. It had a shape he couldn't understand, something he had never seen before. Clara realized instantly what had happened. Her face went pale, and she yanked the sleeve up quickly. She stepped back, as if she expected Samuel to say something hurtful. Samuel lifted his hands gently. "It's all right," he said softly. "I didn't mean to stare." Clara didn't answer. She looked at the ground, her breaths unsteady. "It's just a mark," Samuel added. "Everyone has something." But Clara shook her head. "Not like this," she whispered. "You don't understand." Samuel wanted to ask what the mark meant, but he held himself back. He remembered her rule, no questions about the past. Still, the pain in her eyes made him worry even more. Clara walked away from the barn and stood under the small roof near the house to stay out of the rain. Samuel followed slowly and stopped beside her. "Clara," he said in a gentle voice. "You don't have to be afraid of me." She looked away. "I'm not afraid of you," she whispered. "I'm afraid of what you might think." Samuel shook his head. "I won't judge you." "You say that now," Clara replied, her voice cracking. "But you don't know who I used to be." Those words hung between them, heavy and filled with unspoken memories. After the rain eased, Clara walked into the house without another word. Samuel stood outside for a long moment, trying to understand what she was carrying inside her heart. He could see that she was terrified not of him, but of being known. She felt safer behind the walls she built, even if those walls kept them apart. That night, Clara avoided him again. She stayed in the bedroom, and Samuel stayed in the living room. But unlike before, he could sense she wasn't avoiding out of habit, she was avoiding because something inside her had been shaken. The next morning, She acted as if nothing had happened, but Samuel could feel the tension in her movements. She worked in silence, kept her distance, and avoided looking in his direction. Her hands trembled slightly whenever he came too close. It hurt Samuel to see her like that, but he didn't push. He didn't ask. He let her take the space she needed. As the days passed, something slowly began to change. Clara started spending more time outside, sitting near the cows or walking along the fence. Samuel noticed she was thinking deeply, sometimes staring at the sky for long minutes. One evening, he approached her carefully and sat a few feet away, giving her space. "You've been quiet," he said softly. Clara took a deep breath. "I'm trying to decide something." "About what?" She hesitated before speaking. "About whether I should tell you the truth." Samuel kept his voice gentle. "You can tell me when you're ready. I'm not going anywhere." Clara looked at him for the first time in days, and her eyes were filled with fear and hope all at once. "I want to trust you," she whispered. "I want to tell you everything. But I don't want you to look at me differently afterward." Samuel shook his head slowly. "I won't." Clara looked away again, her voice soft and fragile. "I don't know if I believe that yet. But I want to." Those words were the closest she had ever come to opening her heart. Samuel realized she wasn't just hiding a past, she was hiding wounds, insecurities, and years of feeling out of place. Clara stood up slowly and looked toward the house. "Not today," she said gently. "But soon. When I feel safe." Samuel accepted that. He knew trust didn't grow in a day. It grew like a plant, slowly, quietly, and only when treated with care. And even though he had more questions than answers, he felt a small spark of hope. Clara was finally taking one step toward him. Even if it was a small one. He didn't know what truth she was holding, but he understood one thing clearly. She wanted to be understood. She wanted to be accepted. She wanted to belong somewhere. And Samuel silently promised himself that he would give her that chance. Whatever her past was, he would listen. He would not judge. He would not turn away. Clara didn't know it yet, but she was safer with him than she had ever been before. The next morning arrived quietly, with a soft orange light spreading across the fields. The rooster crowed from somewhere far away, and the cool breeze carried the scent of damp soil. Caleb woke up earlier than usual. He lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling, remembering the strange turn his life had taken. He had married Mariana out of desperation, hoping at least for some comfort or companionship. But instead, she had locked the door, slept separately, and left him confused and restless. He slowly got up, washed his face, and stepped outside the cabin. The air felt fresh, but his thoughts were heavy. He saw the cow grazing peacefully near the wooden fence. The cow looked content, as if unaware that she was the reason behind Caleb's strange marriage. Caleb walked toward her and gently stroked her neck. "Well," he whispered softly, "you're the only one talking to me so far." The cow mooed in response, almost as if acknowledging his joke. Caleb sighed and leaned on the fence. He wondered what kind of person Mariana really was. Why had she stayed silent? Why had she locked the door? Why did she look so sorrowful when she thought no one was watching? He replayed the faint expression on her face last night, the one moment when her strong posture had slipped and a sadness had appeared in her eyes. Caleb didn't understand her. But something inside him refused to judge her too quickly. After all, everyone carried their own burdens. Maybe she did too. A few moments later, the cabin door opened slowly. Caleb turned and saw Mariana emerging into the morning light. She looked different than before. Quieter, calmer, and almost shy. Her large frame still made her look powerful, but there was a softness in her expression that he hadn't seen on the wedding day. She clutched a small metal bucket in her hand. "I am going to milk the cow," she said, her voice steady but polite. Caleb nodded. "I can help if you want." Mariana hesitated for a long second. Then she shook her head gently. "I know how to do it. But, thank you." She walked over, settled beside the cow, and began milking her with skillful hands. Caleb watched quietly. Mariana did not look like someone who came from a life of ease. Her movements showed experience, effort, and discipline, things learned over years of hard work. Caleb admired that. When she finished, she carried the bucket back toward the cabin. Caleb followed her, still unsure what to say. Inside the house, she poured the milk into a clay pot and set it aside. "You must be hungry," she said without turning around. "I will make breakfast." Caleb blinked, surprised. Yesterday she barely said a word, and now she was preparing a meal for him. "Thank you," he replied. "That's kind of you." Mariana didn't respond, but she started working quietly. She chopped vegetables, heated the pan, and moved around the small kitchen like someone used to handling responsibilities alone. The scent of cooked eggs and herbs filled the air. Caleb sat at the table, watching as she placed the simple but warm breakfast in front of him. "Eat," she said lightly. He nodded and started eating. The food was delicious, simple but comforting. He looked at her as she turned away, as if she didn't want to be watched. "You cook really well," Caleb said kindly. Mariana paused for a moment. "Thank you," she replied softly, and then sat at the far end of the table with her own plate. Silence hung between them again, but this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was simply peaceful. Caleb sensed that she was trying, in her own way, to make things easier. After breakfast, Caleb went to tend the fields. But unlike yesterday, he wasn't alone now. Mariana followed him outside and began helping with the chores. She carried heavy sacks of feed, lifted buckets of water, and repaired small pieces of broken fencing tasks that normally took Caleb much longer. "You don't have to do all this," Caleb said, though he appreciated her effort. "It is my home now too," Mariana replied simply. "We should work together." Something warm stirred in Caleb's chest. Her words didn't just sound practical, they carried a sense of belonging. She hadn't shown anything like that the night before, but now she was slowly opening up. As the day went on, they continued working side by side. Caleb discovered that Mariana was surprisingly gentle with animals. She talked to the cow softly, stroked the young donkey with care, and even left some grains out for the wild birds that visited the farm. Little by little, Caleb found himself curious about her. Who was she before she came here? Why did she accept a marriage offer from a poor rancher she didn't even know? Around noon, they took a break under the shade of a tree. Caleb drank water from a flask and handed it to Mariana. She took it with gratitude. "Mariana," he began carefully, "can I ask something?" She didn't look at him. "You can ask," she said. "Why did you agree to marry me? You could have found someone better, someone richer, maybe someone more suitable." Mariana fell quiet. Her fingers tightened around the water flask. For a moment Caleb thought she would refuse to answer. But then she took a deep breath. "People judge me for how I look," she said slowly. "They see only my size, not my heart. No one ever tried to know me. When your uncle came asking for someone to manage your home, my family thought it was a chance. They forced me to say yes. They said I should be grateful anyone wanted me." Her voice grew softer, almost trembling. "I did not want to be married that way, but I had no choice. So I came here, hoping maybe this place would give me a new life." Caleb felt a deep ache in his chest. He had married her for a cow. She had married him because she had been cornered by people who never saw her true worth. "Mariana," he said gently, "I may be poor, but I would never see you as a burden or something to trade. I didn't understand you yesterday, but I want to understand you now." She looked at him finally, really looked at him with eyes that held years of quiet pain. "No one ever said that to me," she whispered. The breeze rustled the leaves above them, filling the silence between their words. "I know I locked the door last night," she continued after a moment. "It was not because I disliked you. I was afraid. I didn't know what kind of man you were. I thought maybe distance was safer until I understood you." Caleb nodded. "I understand. And you can take your time. I'm not in a hurry. This home is yours as much as mine. For the first time since she arrived, a small, shy smile appeared on her lips. It wasn't bright or bold, but it was enough to bring warmth to Caleb's heart. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly, but with a new sense of comfort. They worked together, talked a little, and slowly began to trust each other. Caleb noticed that Mariana listened more than she spoke, but when she did talk, her words were thoughtful and sincere. She was strong on the outside, but inside she carried a soft kindness. By evening, the sky turned golden, and birds began returning to their nests. Caleb and Mariana stood by the fence, watching the sun sink behind the hills. The moment felt peaceful, something their first day of marriage never had. "Thank you for helping today," Caleb said. Mariana gave a gentle nod. It felt good to be useful. "You are more than useful," Caleb said honestly. "You're strong, capable, and thoughtful. I'm lucky to have you here." But all the verses, she lowered her eyes, touched by his words. Soon afterward, they returned inside. Mariana prepared a warm dinner, and Caleb set the table. This time, they ate facing each other, sharing small conversations and quiet smiles. When the night grew darker, Mariana stood up and looked at him carefully. "Caleb, I won't lock the door tonight," she said softly. "I trust you." Her voice carried sincerity, hope, and a quiet courage that touched him deeply. Caleb nodded respectfully. "You're safe here, Mariana. Always." She smiled again, a little brighter this time. Before walking toward the bedroom, Caleb followed, feeling a calmness he had never felt before. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like a beginning, and for the first time since their unexpected marriage, they both went to sleep with peaceful hearts.